looking at the single largest bank robbery in human history. No guns, no masks, just one ultimate target, $1 billion. Let's break through the firewalls and see exactly how this digital nightmare unfolded. Dhaka, Bangladesh, a sprawling, chaotic metropolis of 20 million people waking up to the dawn. A city that never stops moving, but standing amidst the chaos is an impenetrable fortress, the Bangladesh Central Bank. Behind these heavy walls lies the wealth of an entire nation. Deep inside, on the restricted 10th floor, is the Swift Room, a highly secure chamber connecting Bangladesh to the global financial system. But the real threat wasn't walking through the front door. It was a phantom presence, meticulously observing every protocol from the digital shadows. In the corner of that secure room sits a single, unremarkable beige dot matrix printer. This machine is isolated. It is not connected to the regular office network. It is tethered by a single, dedicated lifeline. Its only purpose in the world is to physically print out a paper receipt every single time the bank transfers millions of dollars overseas. It is the ultimate failsafe, a physical paper trail in an invisible digital world, an alarm system made of ink. Thursday, February 4th, 2016. The morning begins like any other. The staff settle in, preparing for a standard day of global commerce. But at exactly 8:45 a.m., the faint, reassuring hum of the machine stops. It goes completely silent. On the console, a bright red error light begins to blink. A digital hand had just reached out and covered its eyes. An employee walks over to investigate. They check the paper tray, assuming the simplest explanation. It's empty. They try to restart the machine, pressing the buttons, but it remains cold, unresponsive. In a high-stakes financial environment, a broken printer is just an annoyance. They look mildly frustrated, but not alarmed. The staff assumes it's a minor hardware glitch, a jammed gear, a driver error. Nothing. That can't wait. They check the calendar. The weekend is approaching. Friday and Saturday are non-working days in Bangladesh. They make a fatal decision. They shrug, turn off the lights, and walk away, deciding they will just fix it on Sunday. Nobody panicked. Nobody sounded an alarm, because nobody knew that the printer wasn't broken. It had been intentionally blinded. Behind that blank screen, invisible hands had already bypassed the firewalls. The digital ghosts were now inside the vault, bypassing every security measure in complete silence. In the time it took the staff to finish their morning tea, nearly $1 billion was being quietly escorted out the digital door. Sunday morning, the weekend silence is broken. The bank opens its heavy doors, completely oblivious to the impending storm. The staff return to their desks. The silent, suffocated printer is finally rebooted. A simple physical connection is restored. And then the dam breaks. The machine violently awakens, relentlessly spewing out a terrifying weekend of digital secrets. This wasn't a minor hardware glitch. It was a massive backlog. The alarm hadn't failed. It had been intentionally gagged. Hundreds of transaction pages flood the floor. Each printed line is a frantic, automated cry for help from the system. They read the destination, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the absolute core of the global financial empire. Directors are immediately summoned. Cold disbelief washes over the room as they stare blindly at the impossible numbers. 35 fraudulent requests, nearly $1 billion targeted, and $81 million has already vanished into thin air. The massive physical vault remains completely untouched, but their digital reserves have been brutally and silently bled dry. Absolute panic erupts. The realization hits the room like a shockwave. A sovereign nation has just been robbed blind. Global investigators scramble, desperately trying to follow a digital money trail that instantly disappears into the deep shadows.
It is done.
The stolen funds are
We'll be in
already
touch.
moving, being washed through offshore casinos and shadowy, untraceable criminal syndicates. Security teams frantically trace the origin. This wasn't a local thief. It was a highly coordinated global cyber strike. An invisible digital army had breached the walls, smashing right through the world's most secure financial network. Somewhere, thousands of miles away, the brilliant architects of the heist sit quietly in the comforting dark. Just a few keystrokes, a few elegant lines of code, the ultimate, silent weapon of the modern age. They didn't just rob a single bank. They brought an entire global financial institution to its absolute knees. The global authorities quickly realized a terrifying truth. They weren't hunting a single, ordinary rogue thief hiding in the shadows. They were hunting digital ghosts in the machine, a highly disciplined, ruthlessly efficient, and entirely invisible phantom syndicate. This was never a small basement operation. It was a massive, fully funded, state-sponsored digital army, quietly preparing for war. Intelligence agencies finally connected the scattered dots. The prime suspect was the infamous, highly lethal Lazarus Group, a rogue, isolated nation, suffocating under the crushing weight of global sanctions, had found a dark new way to survive. And they had a terrifying, proven precedent. Just 2 years earlier, they brought the Sony Pictures empire to its absolute knees. But that previous attack was merely about revenge and chaos. Now, their ultimate motive had drastically and dangerously evolved. The invisible iron hand of the state was now reaching directly and violently into the global financial vault. Completely isolated and cut off from the world economy, they decided to weaponize their absolute, chilling desperation. Physical borders, armed military guards, and towering concrete walls meant absolutely nothing in this new, silent digital warfare. The romanticized era of bank robbers wearing ski masks and carrying heavy shotguns was now officially and permanently dead. The new, unforgiving battlefield was the deep shadow, web, cold, meticulously calculated, and completely untraceable by conventional means. Their devastating weapons weren't forged in massive steel factories. They were meticulously coded, line by line, in absolute silence. It was a flawless, masterful heist plan, meticulously designed to exploit the very bleeding veins of international finance. The towering, seemingly untouchable monuments of Western wealth and arrogance were now painted as perfectly vulnerable, high-value targets. They didn't just pick a random digital lock. They infiltrated the sacred SWIFT network itself, the holy grail of banking, the absolute central nervous system of money, silently connecting every single major banking institution across the entire globe. They proved that if this ultimate, trusted system could be compromised, the world's physical wealth was entirely defenseless. A terrifying, irreversible new precedent had just been set. The impenetrable global digital fortress had finally fallen. It didn't begin with explosives or a cinematic shootout. It started with a perfectly crafted, seemingly innocent digital trap. They targeted the human element, patiently waiting for a vulnerable employee, desperately looking for a better career, opportunity, a highly sophisticated spear phishing campaign. disguised as a lucrative job offer from a prestigious global financial institution. Attached was a single lethal file. Resume zip. The ultimate Trojan horse, hiding a devastating payload of malicious code. With one fatal, unthinking click, the unsuspecting employee unwittingly handed over the absolute keys to the entire kingdom. The screen flickered briefly. In a fraction of a second, the invisible invaders had silently crossed the perimeter. The malicious packet navigated the fiber optic veins, completely bypassing every multi-million-dollar firewall the bank had ever erected. The digital vault door swung wide open, but the hackers didn't rush in to grab the cash immediately. Instead, they waited. The Lazarus Group was terrifyingly patient, understanding that a rushed heist is a failed heist. They spent an entire year lurking inside the network as invisible ghosts, watching every single transaction flow, mapping the architecture, understanding the complex digital anatomy of the Bangladesh Central Bank better than its own creators. They stalked the administrators, silently recording their keystrokes, capturing their passwords, and studying their daily operational habits. They learned the exact shifts, knowing precisely when the security teams were most relaxed and when the guards changed. They obsessively studied the swift operating procedures, mastering the complex language of international money transfers to avoid detection. From their dark rooms, they looked down upon the bustling financial floor with absolute, godlike digital omniscience. The employees had absolutely no idea that an invisible sniper was aiming directly at their financial heart. But before they could pull off the heist, they needed to completely silence the bank's internal alarm system. They targeted the blind spots, the neglected servers, and outdated routing protocols that nobody bothered to check anymore, exploiting archaic hardware to create a permanent, undetectable backdoor into the most sensitive areas of the network. They metaphorically rusted the hinges of the security mechanisms, ensuring the automated defenses would completely fail when triggered. The most brilliant move was targeting the physical printer, the machine responsible for printing every single SWIFT confirmation. Normally, this printer would immediately alert the staff of any massive, unauthorized transfers leaving the central bank. They injected a highly specialized, custom-built malware designed specifically to blind, gag, and cripple this exact machine. A weaponized piece of code designed not to steal, but to aggressively cover their digital tracks in real time. The virus infected the print spooler. When the fraudulent transfers occurred, the machine would simply print blank paper. They effectively severed the digital vocal cords of the bank, the ultimate silencer, ensuring no one would hear a thing. The infiltration was flawless. The alarms were dead. The stage was finally set for the heist of the century. Everything was meticulously prepared. The network was fully compromised, and the alarm system was utterly, silently crippled. But the most brilliant part of their entire operation wasn't the malicious code. It was the flawless timing. They launched the devastating attack on a quiet Thursday evening, February 4th, the beginning of the weekend in Bangladesh. By the time the central bank's employees returned to their desks on Sunday morning, the Federal Reserve Bank in New York would be completely closed for its own weekend. The communication channels between the two massive institutions were deliberately and perfectly out of sync. But the masterstroke was their final destination. The money was being funneled directly into the Philippines, right as the entire nation was shutting down to celebrate a massive, multi-day Lunar New Year festival. For 5 agonizing, helpless days, A terrifying financial blind spot engulfed half the entire world. And in that unprecedented window of absolute silence, the Lazarus Group finally pushed the button. 35 massive, fraudulent transfer requests, nearly $1 billion, quietly ordered to be sent across the globe. The requests hit the New York Fed. To the automated systems, they looked completely, terrifyingly legitimate. The passwords matched. The security protocols were perfectly satisfied. The devastating transactions were fully authenticated. $951 million. The wealth of an entire developing nation teetering on the edge. And just like that, the digital vault doors swung open. The massive fortune began its lightning-fast journey to Asia. $81 million successfully slipped through the cracks, landing safely in 4 accounts in Manila. These weren't ordinary accounts. They were fake, dormant accounts set up at the RCBC Bank nearly a year prior. The final, most crucial stage of the heist had begun. The incredibly difficult process of the laundry. Digital money is incredibly easy to steal, but it is notoriously difficult to hide from international investigators. You can't just withdraw $81 million from a street ATM. It leaves a massive, undeniable trail. The stolen funds needed to be immediately cleansed, washed of their digital history, and turned into untraceable cash. The hackers used the perfect, unregulated financial black hole. The massive, glitzy casinos of the Philippines. Millions of stolen dollars were quickly transferred to corrupt remittance companies and physically packed into heavy duffel bags. In the VIP rooms of the casinos, the dirty cash was effortlessly traded for high-value casino chips, played at the tables for a short while, then cashed out again as perfectly clean, legitimate gambling winnings. The money trail simply evaporated into the thin, smoky air of the casino floor. The perfect crime was complete. The money was gone, and the world's financial system would never be the same. Almost $1 billion sat waiting in the shadows, a sum so incredibly massive it could permanently cripple an entire nation. The routing commands were absolutely flawless, requiring just one invisible keystroke to quietly drain the Federal Reserve of its immense wealth. These operators were ghosts in the machine, armed not with guns or masks, but with pure, terrifying digital supremacy. But the universe often harbors a remarkably cruel sense of irony, proving that even the absolute gods of code can stumble. They typed foundation with an A instead of an O, creating the most devastatingly expensive spelling mistake in human history. Half a world away, an observant analyst's eyes suddenly narrow at the screen as the perfect illusion begins to inevitably shatter. The Federal Reserve aggressively snaps awake from its slumber, forcing the impenetrable digital vault doors to violently slam shut forever. Alarm bells instantly ring out for a suspicious transaction, leaving hundreds of millions of stolen dollars permanently frozen in the void. Deafening security sirens scream across maximum security data centers worldwide, signaling that the silent, invisible war has just become dangerously visible. The global network relentlessly purges the foreign intruders from its servers, violently choking the life out of the century's greatest heist. Panicking in the dark, the sophisticated malware initiates self-destruction, desperately trying to erase the digital footprints it could not steal. Back in the heart of Dhaka, the central bank's silent physical accomplice, the crucial machine meant to log every single transaction, that crucial printer suddenly goes completely insane, relentlessly spewing out miles of corrupted, utterly unreadable gibberish across the cold floor. The vital system logs are officially dead, leaving the undeniable truth completely buried. Under a chaotic blizzard of worthless blank paper, their access is brutally denied, bringing the ultimate cyber operation to its knees because of one single, pathetic human error. Defeated, the faceless phantoms abruptly pull the plug, fading back into the dark web, where they remain, untraceable and completely untouchable. They retreat without a sound, leaving behind an empty room and a deeply traumatized financial world, violently trembling in genuine fear. Yet, despite the failure, $81 million still slipped away, quickly swallowed by the dark, untraceable currents of Manila's underground casinos. The terrified world desperately rushes to build higher walls, deploy thicker digital armor, and design infinitely smarter security algorithms. But the brilliant minds who truly understand the underlying code already recognize the deeply terrifying reality of what just happened here. This historic event was never a true failure. It was merely a test run, a profoundly devastating proof of concept. The seemingly impenetrable global fortress has finally been breached, and the chaotic blueprint for absolute destruction is now completely out there. They might have missed the ultimate grand prize today, but these relentless machines are always learning from every single mistake, and somewhere hidden, deep within the neon cyberpunk shadows, they are already quietly compiling the vicious code for our next nightmare.